We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about some must-have baits and presentations you need to target those really nice bass from the middle of summer and beyond. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. There we go. Whoa, that's not bad. Okay. Come on, little buddy. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And in the previous video, if you haven't watched it, go check it out because it's very important, especially how it relates to this video. We talked about where to locate those bass when it's really hot, depending on what weather you're having. Bluebird sky is calm, whether you've got some wind and some current, whether those bass are setting up where they are, or whether those bass are on the move. Go watch that and then come back and we're going to talk more in depth about the baits that I'm fishing, how I'm locating those bass, and then we're talking about the baits that I'm using, the colors that I'm using, and how I'm working those baits because it's pretty specific. Now, one thing you're going to notice that is conspicuously absent from this video is topwater. Now, that doesn't mean you can't catch topwater fish right now, but what it means is, well, other forms of fishing, other techniques are producing better results. I probably won't tie topwater on again till probably the end of September. That's what's going on in my area because, well, 110 degrees and I just don't get a lot of action on topwater. We get in the trap of chasing those busting bass. We see those busting bass all around us, and I myself am guilty of this. Those are bass, those are active. Go over there, get them, catch a fish, have a great day. But unfortunately, that's not how it works out most of the time. Those bait balls, those bass are chasing, they are on the move. They're all over the place. And if you're in a little boat that does not have electronics, you are not going to get them every time. So if I see the bass splashing way over there, I'm leaving them there. Because if you get into that trap, you'll just drive yourself crazy chasing your tail all day. Now, if I see them splashing around me, well, I'm going to have something tied on to handle that just below the surface. And it's going to be one of the baits that we've talked about. It's going to be something that we're talking about here because it does work. You don't have to have splashing bass for it to work. You can have regular, bass that are in the area that are set up in the area for one reason or the other, but it will work if you see busting bass. So bear that in mind. Don't go chasing your tail, chasing those busting bass. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be nothing but a headache. What am I doing? Well, I'm going to be starting off with something like this. A smoke-colored soft plastic jerkbait. This color is on purpose. There's a very specific reason I'm using this color, and that is I'm fishing it lower in the water column, even though I'm going to be fishing it weightless. Now, you might want to add a small 1/32 ounce or 1/16 ounce nail weight in the nose, but I want this lower in the water column and I'm fishing it more slowly. And the reason is that dark color. It's going to give me some contrast. It's going to stand up from the vegetation and the murky water around it. And whenever the bass are fishing things that are beneath them, whenever they're looking down into that vegetation, a lot of times it helps to have something that's got contrast in it. So that's why we're talking about things that are lower in the water column, not at the top. So if I'm fishing down more, say beneath the bass, so to speak, this is going to be a color that I'm using. But if I'm fishing above them, if I'm fishing a little bit higher in the water column, still subsurface, maybe 3, 5, 10 inches down, I'm going to be using a pearl white soft plastic jerkbait because this is going to stand out more from their eye level up. The higher it gets above them, the more of a shadow it's going to cast and the darker it's going to appear. But it's still going to have that striking contrast. And I'm working this faster. So it's going to be a minnow twitching back and forth. Couple of taps on slack line and then kind of let it glide down a little bit. Couple of taps on slack line, let it glide down a little bit. I'm only tapping the slack out of that line. I don't want to do anything else. As soon as I feel that slack come out, I'm letting off. but I am fishing this faster than I'm fishing this. This I want lower, this I want higher. And I found that is a key way to getting some really good strikes, varying up my colors based on the depth of the water that I'm fishing. Case in point, well, this guy right here. This is just a regular old black Zoom trick worm. I have it on a Texas rig with a 1/4 ounce bullet weight that is not peg. It moves freely because I'm fishing very thick vegetation. I want that weight to be able to fall away from the bait so it doesn't drag my worm down into the hydrilla with it. This can stay on top and I can just drag my rod and it'll come up and over. Or I can sweep my rod to the side and this will stay on the bottom. Not having that pegged gives me a little more versatility in how I retrieve that bait. I'm not locked into one thing, and I like that. So sometimes I want to come up and over that vegetation. Sometimes I want to stay right against the bottom. And again, I'm fishing this with a black trick worm. I want that contrast. I want it to stick out from the bottom. I'm not so much worried about whether it looks natural, whether it's something that looks like something the bass are going to eat, something that they prey on all the time. I want it to stick out. I want it to move in such a way that it elicits their curiosity. That's where I'm going for. I want them to come in and I want them to see it and be curious about it and get a strike that way, Standard setup, obviously. I've got 30-pound braid. I'm working to a 12-pound fluorocarbon leader, just a regular 1/4 ounce bullet weight, 7 1-to-1 gear ratio rod, 7-foot, medium heavy, fast action. I'm just working it nice and slowly along the bottom, reeling in a little bit of the slack, nice and slowly along the bottom. I'm working this on a good bit of slack line. Watch your line. You've got to be able to see if it kicks or jumps or swims off. That's one of the biggest clues whenever you're fishing with a Texas rig. So always bear that in mind. Whenever you watch your line and you pay attention and focus, well, not only will you feel more bites, but you'll see more bites. Now, another rig that I'm using, and this is one of the ones that we've talked about before, but this is a Mojo rig, right? You see this here? And I've got a Berkley Pit Boss tied on. And it's got that black with that blue flake underneath the bottom of it. This has been absolute money. And it's not just been the Pit Boss that's been that way. You guys have seen me fish these Missile Baits D-bombs. These things here, they've got green pumpkin on one side, and then they've got a dark blue on the other side. The color is called Superbug, I believe, but just been picking these up at Walmart, and they've been amazing, especially on this Mojo rig, or Baby Carolina, as a lot of people call it, as I'm used to calling it. You can see here that I've just got a bullet weight, 1/4 ounce bullet weight, and on either side, I've got a weight stop, a bobber stop. And make sure when you're doing this, make sure that the bobber stops that you use, the weight stops that you use, match the line that you're using. If you get them and they're too small, that weight's just going to slide all the way around. If you get them and they're too big, well, you won't be able to get the bobber stops on, right? If the line is too big for the bobber stops that you're using, you're going to have a hard time getting them on that line, and you're going to have a hard time moving them around. So I go with a medium-sized bobber stop. I go with a medium size because I feel that works well for me. Now, another thing that I'm using to target the middle of that water column is a spinnerbait. I use it without a trailer because I want to pare that down. And I've got double willows on this, and these are gold. This is for that murkier water on a bluebird sky day. Got some wind, got some current, got some wave action going, and this works exceptionally well. For me, so far, this has been the year of the spinnerbait. I've done better this year on a spinnerbait than I ever have. And I've been fishing spinnerbaits since I was a little kid, since maybe 10, 11 years old. So well over 40 years. And this year has been the best that I've ever had. Just regular white, maybe a little bit of a shad pattern, nothing fancy, nothing special, just a regular Ozark Trail spinnerbait. This poor guy has seen better days. It's caught me a lot of fish, but $2.50 at Walmart works great. I've had no problems with it. The hook has not bent out, and it's caught me a lot of fish. And again, I'm not fishing it with a trailer. And I'm slow rolling it because I'm using the speed of my retrieve to determine how high that spinnerbait is in the water column. That's what's been working best for me. That's what's been working well for me. I've caught nice fish after nice fish. In fact, one of the biggest fish I've caught all year on the big lake was caught with a white spinnerbait. So bear that in mind. It's something those bass are curious about because it resembles those small bait balls that they're seeing. And just a double willow blade. I don't even need to use a tandem blade with a Colorado. And I'm really not using a Colorado blade because I don't want a whole lot of thump. Because on my fishery, there's just so much pressure. I tend to want to go quieter. I use baits that don't have a lot of rattles and baits that don't have a lot of noise. You know, I'm using things like this Googan bait. This is a slim shake worm. These things are actually really good. They're very similar to a trick worm, but it's enough of a variation that I can get some extra bites. You know, I'm still using the dark colors and it pairs well with that. I'm using those deeper down in the water column. And if I want a little bit more movement, something like a good old Yum Christy Crawl. Again, I'm using that dark color. And this works really good on that Mojo rig because it gives it a little bit more glide. It's going to take longer before it hits the bottom, much like a Carolina rig. It's a great way to elicit some extra strikes, especially when those bass are feeling extra finicky. And if you want something that doesn't maybe have so much flap to it, well, something like this Gambler Baits Boxer Crawl. And you can see again, this has just got some, you know, some real sharp blues to it in contrast to that black. This is going to stand out in that murky water. Again, against the bottom, I'm going to be fishing this lower in that water column, and this is going to be generating those great strikes for me. So like we talked about, higher up in the water column, near the surface, especially on a sunnier day, I'm going to be fishing colors that are whites, colors that are brighter, colors that stand out, pearls. And that's where I'm going to be putting my flashy baits. I'll even use chrome and gold jerk baits higher up in the water column, even on sunny days. That's what's been working great for me. Lower in that water column, that's where I'm switching to those darker colors. That's where I'm switching to the colors that have a lot of contrast against that darker background. So there you have it. Some simple to use baits and presentations that will work from midsummer all the way through August. Best part is you can modify them based on where in the water column you're using them and how you're using them. I'm sure they're going to get you a lot more bites. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.